Hi. So recently we read the story Solomon Crocodile, which is about this pesky little crocodile who loves to bother everybody. And we looked at the illustrations by the artist Catherine Rayner. And we talked about all the different colors that we saw, the lines and shapes and textures that we also observed when looking at her illustrations. And so what we're gonna do today is we are going to use these kind of speckled illustrations for Solomon's body to paint our drawing that we did last week. Now, we're gonna be using a technique called wet on wet watercolor. So you're gonna need your watercolor paint and a cup of water with a brush. You are going to notice that our watercolor trays, there's 2 trays, and they're separated into cool colors and warm colors. So our warm colors, we got red, orange, yellow, and pink. I know it kind of looks purple, but it's pink. And then our cool colors, we got the greens, teal, blue, indigo, and purple or violet. So we're gonna be using the cool colors to paint Solomon's body, and we're gonna use the warm colors to paint everything else in the background. So wet on wet just means that you are painting wet paint onto something that is already wet. We're gonna be painting wet paint onto a wet piece of paper. So I'm gonna show you how we're gonna do it. So you are going to use your wet paintbrush to just paint some water onto Solomon's body. You can start wherever. I'm gonna start up here on his little nose. I'm not gonna put any paint on his eyeball because we want that to stay white. So I've just got my wet paper here, okay? We don't need a ton of water, but wherever you're gonna add your paint, you want your paper to be wet. Now you're gonna wet your brush again and dip it into your cool color, whichever one you wanna do. I'm gonna go with some greens first. So I'm gonna swirly my brush around and around, and then I've got that green on my brush. Then what you can do is tap it into your wet paper, and you can see that it slowly starts to kind of spread out. Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit more green and start to kind of spread those around. Because our paper is wet, they're easier to kind of spread out or spread around. So I'm gonna add a different color. So I need to wash my brush before I get my new color. And I think I'm gonna go for some of this teal blue color. Gotta wake it up and swirly. And then I can do the same thing and just kind of tap that second color around into my wet area. And now I think I'm gonna wash, and I want these to kind of mix and blend together. So with a clean brush, I am going to start to kind of mix those together. That water, because our paper is wet, is gonna help these mix together. And like I said, they kind of look almost like tie-dye. So you'll notice that I'm not just going crazy and mixing. I still wanna see some of those different colors. And I'm taking my time. I definitely don't wanna get any paint in his eyeball area. And I'm gonna try my best to stay inside the lines around here too. Now I'm gonna end up painting his bottom chin as well, so if I go over that line, not a big deal. Now I got most of him done. And I'm gonna keep painting the rest of his body in that same way. So now I'm gonna kind of wash my brush and add some water to the next part that I'm going to paint. I'm gonna go ahead and paint his bottom jaw, or like where his chin would be. So I'm just, again, adding plain water That way my colors can easily mix and blend together. So now that I've got his kind of snout and body painted in that wet on wet technique, I know that you noticed in the illustrations that his body also has that speckled kind of texture that the illustrator used spotted paint to kind of make it look like he has that spotted texture. She also has some gold on the cover too. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna use the same paint that we just used to splatter some around on his face and some of his body. So you were gonna need that little circle that you cut out last week. We're gonna use this just to place on top of his eye because we don't wanna get any of those splatter paints into the white part of his eye. So we're just gonna leave this right here. Okay, we're not gonna tape it or glue it down because we're gonna move it eventually, but we're gonna leave it on top. That way we don't get any splatter in his white eye. So what you will do this time is you're gonna clean your brush, make sure your brush is nice and clean, and you're gonna pick out a warm color. So I'm gonna swirly and get that red paint onto my brush, and then we're gonna do a little bit of mess making here. So I got that red on my brush, and you're gonna take your finger and you're gonna kind of splatter it all over his body. Now I'm being pretty gentle here. I'm not going crazy, okay? Because if we go kind of crazy, then you're gonna get too much paint on his body. So all I'm doing is just touching my brush to my finger like this, but I'm doing it close to my paper. So I'm kind of showing you up close that you're just using your finger to touch those bristles and to kind of flick them towards your paper. Okay, and because our paper's wet, it really has that cool wet on wet effect still. Now I'm gonna wash my brush, making some real dirty Kool-Aid. And I'm gonna pick another color. I think I will try the pink this time. Swirly, get that pink on your brush. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna use the same finger and just splatter some pink on there as well. Now, it is okay if you get some of this in the background area because we're gonna paint our background using a warm color anyways. Okay, but I am trying my best to just keep it on his body. Now, the great thing about our little cutout yellow is that if you splatter on top of the yellow, when you move that white paper, his eye will still be white, which will be great. Wow, look at how beautiful he is. Okay, now, I want you to look at my fingers. Okay, is my whole hand painted? Absolutely not. You're just gonna use one or maybe two fingers to use your paintbrush to kind of flick that paint, okay? So you should not have paint all over your hands when you are done with this. There will obviously be some on your fingers, but you should not have paint all over your hand, and you are making that mess on purpose. Now, once you have finished with your splatters, it's time for the big reveal. Drum roll, please. I'm gonna take this little paper off, and look, his eye is still perfectly white. Didn't get any splatters on it, and that is the goal. This looks so amazing. I can't wait for you guys to try it. Now, after we've gotten our splatter and we're done with our, taking off our paper, then all you gotta do is paint in your background. Now, I told you that you gotta use a warm color for your background. You can mix a couple different colors together as long as you're mixing on your paper. We're never gonna mix in our tray, but you can mix them on your paper. So I'm gonna paint my background and then we'll be done.